Hey everyone, my name is Wedge. Eldritch Moon has already made its mark on Standard to be sure, and while Collected Company is still running rampant like we all expected, spirits are making waves of their own. Going into this new Standard, there's a lot of brewing and a lot of different ways you can make your decks. Everything is all brand new. In this video, we're going to build spirits from the ground up. If you want to make your own spirits deck, hopefully this helps you out. We'll be going in a few different directions so you can pick what you like best and go from there. If you enjoy these types of videos and want more like them in the future, be sure to hit that like button. Helps out a lot. Regardless of how you make the spirits deck, all variants are trying to do the same thing. Disrupt your opponent's tempo so badly that they can't fight your little spirits in the air, and eventually they die a horrible and embarrassing death. Everything about Standard spirits screams tempo plays. Most of them are reactive in nature, so make sure to try and get some type of value when you inevitably flash them in. While your deck is full of tiny creatures and a lot of them are waiting for your opponent to mess up, you do need to create some board pressure. Playing a few spirits early is a good idea, but make sure to keep most of your reactive spells for when you need them. Develop your board by hurting your opponent. You'll see what I mean in a second. Just wanted to give you a quick overview of the deck's philosophy. Let's get into it. If you want to build the best spirit deck you can, there are definitely auto-includes no matter what you're running. We'll begin with the most obvious, Spell Queller. If you're building this deck, a playset of Spell Queller is your reward. The card has already proven its power in only a few short weeks. Since your deck is basically tribal, you need something to protect against Languish, your mortal enemy. Spell Queller is a brutal counter to Languish. Beyond that, the card stops anything big that you care about, and as we move through this deck, you'll see why the Queller is so good. You have so many ways to protect it once it's eaten up a card you don't like. Make no mistake, Spell Queller is the essential spirit in this deck. Sorry about the price tag, but there's a reason it isn't $1. Once you have your Spell Queller, you want ways to support it, keep it alive. It is probably your best card. Rattlechains and Selfless Spirit are both staples in the deck. Rattlechains comes down at instant speed to essentially counter targeted removal. The card has 2 power in the air for 2 mana, and it grants flash to all your other spirits. This is a lord through and through. Worst case scenario, it provides an early beater. Rattlechains is the type of quality spirit enabler that brings a deck like this together. Flash protects your other spirits, grants them something useful. It's a great card. Speaking of great cards, Selfless Spirit not only sacrifices itself to save all your other creatures, but thanks to Rattlechains, it can do it at instant speed when the chains is in play. 2 mana to save your entire team for a turn seems really strong. Granted, it doesn't stop Languish, Destroy effect still exists, Indestructible has serious value, especially in a deck that is going relatively wide with spirits. Rattlechains and Selfless Spirit are both necessary because they protect your other spirits and give all your spirits additional value. Legit no reason not to play them. The last absolute staple as far as I'm concerned is Mausoleum Wanderer. The new Spirit Curse Catcher is just as good as advertised. Drop it on turn 1, your opponent has to think about every single one of their instant or sorcery plays for the rest of the game. Once your mana is open again, they have to worry about pumping and countering for 2. Since flash is so prevalent on your spirits, the Wanderer is a serious threat when you have open mana. Until they deal with it or you sacrifice it, it's going to bash in every single turn. The Wanderer is one of those cards that your opponent doesn't want to deal with, but may be forced to deal with because of the insane value on it. Between Rattlechains giving all your spirits flash, including this one, and the trigger that pumps the Wanderer so easy to activate, this is an easy playset for me in any spirit deck, even up against a creature-heavy meta. It's a fantastic card choice. So we have Spell Queller, Rattlechains, Selfless Spirit, and Mausoleum Wanderer. This is the core of the deck. From here, there are a couple ways you can go. First, we'll talk about the creature-based spirits deck. This variation is a build that focuses on less counters and interactive spells and focuses more on pure creature-based power, trying to fly into your opponent's face really quickly. If this sounds appealing to you, you'll want to begin with a playset of Nebelgast Herald. The card functions a bit like a spell, possibly clearing the path for your spirits or stopping an incoming attacker from wrecking you. Since it has flash innately, it can deter an opposing Avacyn, as well as anything else that can flash in via their Collected Company shenanigans. Not only does it trigger on itself, but it also triggers on any spirit entering the battlefield under your control. Over the long game, if your opponent doesn't get rid of the Herald, you're either getting so much extra damage through or you're stopping a lot of damage. Either way, the Herald will do serious work for you, especially in a variant of this list that focuses less on removal. You'll want this kind of reusable disruption. If you're running the creature-based spirits deck, there are 2 more creatures you really want to include: Bygone Bishop and Archangel Avacyn. Thankfully, Avacyn has been dropping like a rock, so it's a bit easier to get copies of her. And the Bishop is incredibly cheap as is. You want these 2 creatures specifically for one reason: insurance. Archangel Avacyn is your 5-mana insurance against board wipes when you don't have the Selfless Spirit to sacrifice. Avacyn gives everything indestructible while providing another crazy strong creature for your opponent to deal with. Bygone Bishop provides insurance in the form of clue tokens. Since most of your creatures, like 18 plus, are converted mana cost 3 or less, you'll be investigating all the time. This additional value will help you rebuild in the event that you do get board wiped, or it'll help you draw into more disruption or gas in the event you need either of those. Both are very good and will serve their purpose as well. The last creature I'd absolutely consider in a creature-based spirits deck isn't a spirit at all, it's Reflector Mage. Now, I know Reflector has lost a little value now that there are so many flying creatures running around, but the card is undeniably powerful and is the king of tempo, which is what you're trying to do with this strategy. I know it isn't a spirit, I do, but I don't care. The card's powerful. It creates board presence while setting your opponent back, and if the mage returns a big creature, it can set your spell Queller up to eat something tasty. Can't argue with synergy. While this version is a creature-based deck, it doesn't mean we aren't running any spells at all. In fact, I'd say there's only one spell you basically have to run in any spirits deck: Ojutai's Command. Being able to counter a spell, gain 4 life, or draw a card, all good. Returning a creature from your graveyard to the battlefield at instant speed, yeah, that's dirty. 2 converted mana cost, no problem. That grabs the Wanderer, Rattlechains, Selfless Spirit, all creatures you'd want at instant speed. Ojutai's Command is practically a tribal spell at this point. Absolutely amazing. You gotta run at least 2 or 3. The synergy's undeniable. We'll talk about more spells in a second, but the last variation of the Spirits deck is actually banned. They splash green for a few cards, but obviously the main one is Collected Company. Of course, to make this deck work, it needs to be a creature-based Spirits deck, so you hit Company more often than not. If you do run that variation other than Collected Company, you'll probably want Duskrotch Recruiter. Beyond that, I've seen some fun with Tamiyo, but I don't believe it's necessary. Could be wrong though. All I do know is that Collected Company plus Spell Queller and Reflector Mage is broken in Standard. Actually broken. Just a thought. Let's focus on the spell-based version of the deck now. While Ojutai's Command is obviously a staple here as well, there are a few other spells that are uniquely qualified to be in this deck. Now remember, you are playing less creatures, so you have to protect those creatures even more. You still need to win the game after all. If you're going with this build, you'll need to make room by removing a few Nebelgast Heralds and Bygone Bishops, maybe even Avacyn. The Bishop has less value with less creatures, and the Herald is simply the least valuable of your spirit package. Easy cuts as far as I'm concerned. As for spells, Essence Flux has proven to be quite capable in this type of deck. At worst, it's a counter to removal. At best, it's that plus a pump spell. At super best, it's a way for you to upgrade the spell that your spell Queller is keeping down. It provides wonderful synergy with your Enter the Battlefield Spirit effects, gives them more power to end the game faster, and does it all for a single blue mana at instant speed. It's definitely an auto-include. Clash of Wills should be in the deck, not because it's good, but because there are no other legitimate alternatives. They're all terrible. Clash of Wills is the last decent counterspell, if you can even call it that. Your Rattlechains won't be able to save you every time. Clash of Wills counters Languish, and that's good with you. You need at least a few counters in this type of deck. Clash will do the job. Additional removal is always a good thing, and I think that Stasis Snare is where you want to be. Dromoka's Command is annoying, but if your opponent's running it, I'm assuming they're going to use it to deal with your creatures early rather than save it for the potential snare that may never come. This is pretty close to unconditional removal, and it's mana efficient. I'd run a few. Looking at lands for either deck, you see something relatively similar. There aren't any really cheeky lands like Moorland Haunt this time around, so you have your staples. Port Town, Prairie Stream, probably some Evolving Wilds for thinning and fixing. If you're running green for the banned version, Fortified Village, Yavimaya Coast, pretty normal stuff there. As far as sideboarding is concerned, both decks can run most of the same cards. Silk Wrap and Blessed Alliance are both great against the human decks running around. Negate and Dispel for spell-based decks, especially control variants that run annoying planeswalkers, or Secure the Waste that can easily go under you. Always Watching is something crazy awesome in the mirror match, so maybe running a few of them is a good idea. Being able to turn your 2/1s into 3/2s, that's dangerous. Vigilance is nothing to scoff at either. If you do run the card, it's probably just way better in the creature-based version of the deck instead of the spell-based one. Now you won't find an actual deck list in the description because this video was meant to help you build one from scratch. Decide what you want to play and try it out. This was a guide more than anything else, giving you options. Personally, I've been fiddling with a few different builds and I haven't decided where I want to be yet, so I presented the best options to you so you can make your own decision. As far as other variations of the strategy I didn't mention, of course they exist. I can't possibly cover all variants out there, but I believe that the ones I did talk about are the best right now. If you have any questions, concerns, comments, ask below and I'll do my best to answer them. The strategy has a lot of growing and changing to do, but I'm hopeful for its future. As always, subscribe for the latest and most reliable Magic the Gathering information you could ever need. This is the Mana Source, I'm Wedge, thanks for watching, we'll see you next time. This video is brought to you in part by TCGplayer.com. If you want to build spirits, now might be the time to jump in since, the deck's everywhere. Mausoleum Wanderer is one of my favorite cards out of the new set and definitely my favorite spirit. You can grab near mint copies for around $4, a little under that actually. The card's awesome and I highly recommend getting a playset if you need it. Price is definitely fair. Already have your Wanderers? Cool. Players seem to forget that dual lands are still useful. Prairie Streams are $3 right now, decent price for a card that will enter the battlefield untapped a non-zero amount of the time. Grab copies if you need them. Fair price for sure. Enjoy.
Wow.